Welcome to Building Legendary Leaders, the podcast where leaders leave behind chaos and step into clarity. This is where real stories come alive with the struggles, breakthroughs, and lessons that shape the most effective executives today. Every episode delivers fresh insights you can apply to your own leadership journey. If you are ready to stop putting out fires and start leading with purpose, this is the place for you. Here is your host, Jim Saliba.
Welcome to Building Legendary Leaders. Today we have an amazing show. Our guest is the youngest of 12, counted 12 siblings, giving her a very unique insight to navigating complex group dynamics. I think that's kind of putting it lightly. Implemented one of the largest data warehouses in the world for Yahoo, working cross-functional teams and offshore teams, very complex. She bridged the gap between engineering and the C-level executives at Citrus, justifying multi-million dollar initiatives. A lifelong student of leadership, constantly seeking and understanding and improving organizational dynamics. Today, she is reshaping the future and technology as a senior director of product at a huge software as a service company used by over 150,000 companies worldwide, including 90% of the Fortune 500 companies. I want you to join me in welcoming Chon Chua. Welcome today.
Thank you, Jim. It's good to be here. I look forward to our conversation today.
We were talking a little bit. You said your name has real meaning. Why don't you tell us a little bit before we get into the meat of what's going on today?
Absolutely. So I always tell people a story about my name to help them to pronounce and also remember my name. I always tell people that on the day I was born, folks at registrar got so hungry that they ate up one O of my name. That's why on the legal side it's only one O. The pronunciation is double O. Right. And Jim, as you alluded to, I come from a very large family. I'm the youngest in a family of 12. So I've seen, all the organization dynamics played out very early, young, when I was just a little girl growing up. I would say, one of my bosses actually said to me, "Oh, Chun, my goodness, you grow up in such a big family. It's like a football team. You got to fight for survival, right? So you must have learned your organization skills there." And I would say, indeed, yes.
Wow. I never thought it that way, that there is so many dynamics right there every day in your world, and you just had to live with it and grow with it. So I'm sure that will lead into the whole idea of community. Leadership, I believe, is a community onto its own. And if you're a leader, join people into this community by sharing the Building Legendary Leaders videos that you liked. It's all up to you. But today we're going to be diving into the AI Mirage. We've been talking about AI like crazy since last year. But AI sometimes feels like a mirage, and why it kills, well, actually, I'm going to rephrase that so we can cut here and redo this. Today, we're diving into the AI mirage and why culture kills transformation. Here's how it's going to play down. We're going to unlearn the myth that AI can replace human elements in an organizational change. We're going to talk about and architect a strategy for building trust within teams that are undergoing an AI transformation. Let's pivot from technology first approaches to people centric strategies for successful AI implementation. And for those who stay to the end, Chon is going to tell us her secret on how trust and humility are the foundation for implementing change. So before we go into all that, Chum, sounds like we have a lot to talk about. AI. When did you first become aware of AI and the changes it does to an organization?
Yeah, that is a great question, Jim. I did my foundation is in data. So when you deal with so much data, build the one of the largest data warehouse, as you said, you it's a natural progression. After I work on data warehouses, the next thing you ask is how do I draw get analytics from the data. So the next stage is actually to build analytical system. And when you build analytical system, the next stage is how do I use machine learning to unlock the insights in the data? So I would say I grew with the technology. Before AI became AI, it was all about machine learning. And, you know, I saw the progression, experience a lot of the hype of machine learning and even the early days of AI. So I started very long ago, and I think I really caught on when I saw the Chat GPT moment, right? That everybody started to be able to say, "Whoa, now I can talk to the large language model and see it do miracles for me." So I knew that that is a very important inflection point because it means ordinary people who do not do coding, now they can interact with this large language model.
Yes. So I've said this before. If people have been watching these podcasts, I say that AI is a big pattern matching system, but it took a long time to get here. I remember neural nets, chaos theory, right? You've already mentioned data warehouse. We have human language models. It's just now that all these things have come together in a way, and even software as a service and cloud. Without it, it wouldn't all these pieces is what makes AI happen. Without any one of them, it really wouldn't be what it is today.
Absolutely. You need the foundational pieces to be in place. And Jim, you're absolutely spot on in alluding that you need data before you can actually draw insight from them. And also, the quality of the data is very important because it's like if you have lousy type of data that is anyhow, you just source it, it's really perpetuating chaos, as you say. It's garbage in and garbage out. So it's very necessary to have good data.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about the myth of AI replacing the human element in organizational change.
Yeah, that is such a huge topic, and it caused people to be so fearful to say that, this is the Terminator machine coming after me in my job, right? Yeah. I would say if people really dig down, just double click a little bit, right now, can AI replace human? I would say, well, actually not yet. We still need a lot of human in the loop to do the verification, and depends on your industry. For instance, I would say that in the financial industry, you cannot say, oh, if it's just about 90%, 95% right, it's okay. Take payroll for example. You say, hey, AI can do 95% right. But what about the 5%? You are not going to be gambling to say, well, this is your pay stub, and I missed by 95%. I get it right 95%. I only missed by 5%. Say, no, there's no way. It has to line up right to the last cent, right? So it depends on the industry. But writing, yeah, sure, you can flex your creativity to say, I want it to be more creative. And sometimes it's a little bit like stretching the truth too much. In writing is okay, right? In the financial industry, not possible. You will be in a lot of trouble. So, so I don't see that happening right away. I do see displacements of jobs though, right? A lot of things will change. Yeah.
Well, I use it for writing all the time, and it doesn't always get it. Well, it doesn't ever get it at 100% right. Never. Um, And if I let it do what it wants to do, it will take my tone and really take it away. And it will write very neutral, no sarcasm, nothing that makes me will come out of that writing. And even when I train it and tune it and so on, it doesn't always get everything right. And it's amazing how conversational it becomes and it feels more human. But I'll say to it, because I dictate often instead of typing, I'll say, yes, but I really wanted this instead of that. And it says, it comes back and it says, oh, Jim, you're right. What a great catch. Oh, right. So it's always so agreeable too.
Right, right. It went to the point of flattering you all the time, right? To say, you are absolutely a genius. It's like, okay, tone it down. I don't need that, right?
Yes. Yes, right. But it always sounds so confident. So it's easy for us to say, "Oh, that sounds pretty good."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It still helps me and many people in that blank page part. I have to do something. I have so many options. I'm not sure what to think about or what to do. I'll kind of dictate and ramble on all the things I'm thinking of. And it's amazing how it will sort it, give me something to actually start off from. So it is an accelerator where it would have taken me days to kind of mull it in my head and get to something. I get there almost immediately.
Absolutely. It is really a good, I call it a companion to help me, my thought partner, right? And I always put my first draft and then I say, hey, can you please help me to polish? And I say, I want the tone to be this and I want the goal to be this, right? You give it what is called guardrails, constraint, you ground it, right? Then it will do pretty good stuff for you, right? So that's why the fact that if you just let it run loose, it's a hit or miss. But if you ground it and you provide it context and the goal and what is the tone that you want to be, the output, the format, then it actually can, it's quite good at obeying those instructions.
Right, right. And we're talking about this in a writing sense. It's the same thing whether you're using it to write code or figure out strategy or whatever. You have to give it real good guardrails of what you want and where you want to go. So you need to know what you want to do first.
Absolutely. AI does not replace the problem statement. The human need to come up with the problem statement. You as a person using the tool need to know what is the problem statement. What one of my bosses would always like to say, do the what first before you do the how, right? Don't tell me the how because I work with a lot of engineers, Jim, and people love to jump into conclusion, solution, right? Solution first, right? Because that is like the most exciting part. But then what do you want to do? Well, just don't go after the shiny objects.
I am a recovering engineer myself, software, right? Um, and yes, we are very much tuned to jump to the how before we even know the what and why. And my wife tells me to bring it more personal. Jim, you're such an engineer all the time.
There are goodness with engineering. My husband is also an engineer, right? He always tell me, "Oh, Chun, your organization, leadership, the people stuff. I have no idea how you do that. I don't know how to do that. You know how to do that. I know how code works, how to get debugging mode on, and I can figure out how to solve the problem, but I can never figure out what you do. So, each of us, we have our own strength and then what we do best, right? So Jim, you do have a lot of strength, right? Yeah.
Well, I like how you brought it back to the human part of this. Um, Companies go through changes all the time. They always have, always will. If we're waiting for AI to figure out the change and do it, you could figure out the process. It can help you understand the tools you might want to use. but it takes people and leadership and trust and personality and charisma and all those things that AI will never have to really lead people and get things done.
Absolutely. That's why this topic is AI Mirage, right? I do have the front row seat of seeing organization going through transformation, what they used to like to call it digital transformation. But now, it's a lot of steps that leads to how do you unleash AI to the organization. Very similar narrative. And you alluded to this point, right? To say, oh, we hear such great things about the promise, but how come when we do it, we are not getting the value? So I'll share with you some very, I would say, interesting statistic. MIT, I'm sure you've heard of this report, right? Reports that 95% of AI projects fail to meet its goal, right? And BCG says 74% do not actually deliver any significant outcome, business outcome. And this is one that I quite new. It's called by Rand. It says 80% points the problem to leadership and also cultural gap that exists in organization, right? So you can say technology, but then you forget about the human element, the cultural element. And that is where the gap is. And that's why we call this topic the AI mirage, right? There's nothing wrong with the technology. There's nothing wrong with the algorithm. There's nothing wrong with the model. But then if you neglect the human side, then you have a problem.
So when you start lacking the human side, which happens a lot because a lot of leaders jump to process and technology first because it's the easier part. Humans are messy, always have been, we always will be. And just as your husband said, it takes different people to really understand and do that leadership. But a big part of that is trust.
Absolutely.
Tell us more about building trust, why we're trying to go really fast in this AI world.
Yeah, that is such an important topic. And I can talk to you, Jim, about my own personal experience, right? When we built this very large data warehouse system at Yahoo, it was phenomenal. All new technology on new. And when we first roll it out, the reality in terms of user response is not that great, not the way we expected it to be. And the big question is why? It does not matter what you give to your so-called your end user, your stakeholders. If trust is lacking, they will not migrate, they will not adopt because they will say, well, number one, have you trained me? How do I do the conversion of my current business processes that I know how to do? In fact, I have scripts already enabled for it. I wake up to get an automated report. If you don't bridge that gap, and also how I think about things, you don't bridge that gap, they will not use it, right? So that is the gap you see that it shows up well. It demonstrates very well in board meetings, in demos, right? But then when you release it into the wild, you're like, wow, what happened there? How come nobody's adopting it? So the missing link is actually in human connection. If you don't sit with your key stakeholders, they become your compass to guide you and do the iteration. It's called the 80-20 rule, Jim, because it's the last mile problem that will kill you or kill your project because if you don't take care of that, and that last mile problem, a lot of them, they reside in the people, the processes, as you call it, the messy middle. And that messy middle, you have to have a trust, bank that you have built up over the years. If you have not, you start building it now and figure out how do you get to make sure that you bring them along with you.
Mhm. So tell me a little bit about building trust. How do you do that? Said in the beginning, people-centric strategies. We're getting there. So Give me a couple strategies to try.
Yeah, I actually I created this framework that I use for myself in a way of when I do projects, right? I call it the family framework. It starts with F, right? And F is really the foundation of the trust. The trust only happen, especially in high risk project, when you people feel the psychological safety. So that's the foundation, F, right? And then the next word in family is A, that is you need to lead and help people to see what's possible. And I call that the art of possibility, right? That means you need to align to their use case to say what are they trying to do today that's really hard, and then what's possible with this new thing that you're bringing around, right? And then M is what I call the microscopic human connection. They are small. They are very, very small. It is almost like, have you built that relationship with the finance person, FP&A? Do you go up there and talk to them, right? Do you know what they're struggling with, right? Do you know how their workflow is? So those are the ones that you need to be really care and curious enough to know. And then the next one, I is actually very important because if you want people to do something new, something that's groundbreaking, you have to answer the question, what's in it for me? What is my individual growth path going to be if I align with you, right? So that is very important because now you align that person with the collective whole, that how do we go together in this, that when you come together, we come out stronger on the other side, right? And then L, I call that lattice. So it's not a ladder. Ladder is you go one step at a time. A lattice is a little bit like a mesh. And sometimes if you hear the AI practitioner, they'll call it scaffolding. So you build them, and actually you build the bridges as you need to. And this is very much related to the people connection as well, right? And also processes, integration you need to put in place. And then the last one is why, family, right? There needs to be an element of you. If you're the project leader, if you're on the team, where is your part in this equation? So if you put all of this together, this is where you can actually bring something that's really complicated together, having the bank of trust that you built along the time, and also be able to go through obstacles, because you go through a lot of obstacles, things will go wrong. But how do you kind of come together to solve it?
I love that. And everybody that's listening, I always say you should have a pen and notebook handy to write things down. I took a lot of notes in this, and there's three things that jumped out at me: the foundation that you talked about, and that safety, that psychological safety. It's a huge topic that I've been hearing much about for the past couple of years, especially since the book has come out. But people think it's the whole thing. It's not. It is just the foundation. Without that psychological safety, you can't get to these other things because people can't speak up. I love the individual growth. I always talk to leaders about, we have apps in our head. I used to call them radio stations, but it's WIIFM. What's in it for me? You need to understand your audience and what's in it for them to be able to get the most out of what you're trying to do. And I love the you because it's about authenticity. You have to come out, because if you're not authentic, people get it, people understand it, and that's where mistrust comes in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for, providing your perspective into that, Jim.
Oh, you're welcome. This is what changes, in my mind, management to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, if someone is going to go home with something, what's one nugget you want them to take away from this that they can use on Monday morning?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one thing. If you forget about everything that we talk about today, remember this, right? Because all of us have to do hard things, hard projects, having hard conversation, face obstacles and roadblocks on the road when you try to do something, whether it's AI or another type of project, right? Organization change. I would say figure out when you're having to do things that are difficult, that requires a lot of cross-functional alignment, requires trust building, requires people to lean in order to make things happen, right? Ask yourself this one thing. First you figure out who the stakeholder is or are. That's number one. And once you do that, you have to double click to understand, how do you align them to say, how might we make something that currently is a no into a yes? Not by pitching, right? Not by thinking of them as resistors, right? Don't do that. But rather think of them as your compass to guide you to get to the right goal, because it's all about goal orientation. You have to first figure out their fear. Why are they afraid of what you're building, right? Why? Because sometimes it lies into something very deep. It is because, I don't even know where to start. And if you know that that is the reason, then you start there. You say, you know what, we will provide hands-on lab. In fact, we'll get your organization to be successful. We'll train them. We'll go do a badging program to certify them. And then we will make sure that we do what is called the hypercare to help you in that migration. So when you see them as people who also have their day job, and now they have to do this migration, they will say, you get it. You are one of us, and you're not causing us to do something that we have to sacrifice our weekends and nights for this.
Right. That's really that WIIFM that I talked about. What's in it for them? What's in their head? What really understanding your audience. And it takes a conversation to make that happen. Doesn't happen automatically.
Right. It's called, I call it curious enough to want to learn, right? Yeah. You need to be very curious enough. And you embrace the attitude of a lifelong learner. And you talk about humility, right, Jim? I don't have all the answers, and it's okay. You don't have all the answers, and it's okay. You give people permission to go on this learning journey with you and to say, we may fall here and there, trip, but it's okay. We can go together and solve this together, and we will hold each other up, right? We will get on this journey together, and we are not going to be saying you're on your own. It's not like that. So once they see that commitment from you, and also the demonstration of how you show up, how you embrace them, and they trust you, right? Trust is earned and it's not given. Doesn't matter who you are, your title, they don't care.
That's right. I 100% agree. So I wonder, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit. 12 siblings. How did that help you pull this together and understand the dynamics and the trust part of everything you do every day?
That is a very good question, Jim. I didn't really go on an anthropology journey until much later in my life, right? When I did the projects and people say, how do you do it? I don't know. I said, well, I don't know too, but let me find out. Let me go deep. Let me peel the onion layer by layer. And I could finally figure out, well, it's because of my upbringing. It's because of my family. It's because I grew up in such a large family that very early in my family, I have to figure out how to read every persona in the room. My dad always gather, my mom and dad always gather us at the round table during dinner, where he would tell us stories about things, about his life, about his growing up in China, and his stories are, very mesmerizing. I'll sit by, and listen. And I found that the oral tradition that he has imparted to me really helped me to appreciate the power of stories. And then because I have to read every personality in the room, the 11 siblings, they're all different. And sometimes in order to get one sibling out of trouble with my parents, I would do a diverging technique with them, right? Because I may be the youngest, but I'm the one that keeps them out of trouble. Because when you're the youngest, your parents will always give you a lot of brownie points, right? So I use that to help them to get out of trouble by saying, "Oh no, Dad is going to get mad. He's going to yell at number 3. So let me create a diversion." So I learned that. I learned how to manage the different stakeholders, right? And I would say my parents are like the C-level suite people. And then my brothers and my sisters, they are the people that have a lot of stake in this conversation in this family. And that's how I learned. It's the mini United Nation, Jim, I always call it, that I got a lot of practice, thousands times of practice before I step into the boardroom.
So, Chun, you practice this. You were able to be the peacemaker, as I'm getting it from your story. But how does Chun get what Chun wants?
Yeah. So that is actually, I've begun to realize more and more that I show up, what my belief is and my purpose in life is what Adam Grant called it, the pro-social behavior. So what the pro-social is you don't just anchor on yourself. You anchor on what is the collective good for all. So sometimes I may not get what I want right away, but because I help others, is the I in that family, they grow together, and together you build a very strong community. And these are the best things, because when you need anything, you just go to any one of them to say, "Hey, I actually need a little bit of help. Do you think you can help me?" And it's like, "Oh, maybe I just want a brainstorm partner." You'll be so surprised. You are not going alone. When you're alone, you can go a few steps, but together you can go very far. And this is the together part of the community, right? Once you build that up.
We brought that word back in here again, community. Whether it is a family community, a work community, a social community, we are humans and we say we're messy, but part of that human dynamic is community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you ask this, how do I get what I want and what drives me? So I need to tell you another story. So when I was leading a large cross-functional team that spans across many time zones, one of them particularly is Bangalore, India. Every time I finish a project, my engineering team will always ask me, my offshore team will always ask me, "Chun, when are you coming?" So I did 7 delivery of the project without having met them face to face. It's only the virtual tune that they meet up with, and I hear them, and I could actually interpret what's going on in the room just by listening. Then I thought I have to go to India, right? Because they've done so much as a team for me. And when I went to India, I was invited to a home of an engineer. And you know what? When I arrived at the house, he came up running and says, "Chun, Chun, Chun, my mom wants to talk to you." I was like, "Oh, am I in trouble with your mom? Why does she want to talk to me?" He said, "No, no, no, no. We talk about you all the time." So I talked to her, and then she said to me, I was like, so my heart was warm by this Indian mother conversation. She said to me, "Chun, I want you to know, my son, ever since she joined your team, he has a purpose in life. It's not just work. He wakes up and he's a different person because there is joy in him. He comes to work with a purpose. And I want to thank you for doing that." And I was like, wow, thank you for saying that. I didn't know the impact I have on this engineer. And then when I went back to the office, I talked to other engineering lead, and they say to me, "You talk to who?" I said, "To this person's mom." And they were shocked. They said, in the Indian culture, if a mother talk to you, it's a very big deal, because next to God, that position belongs to the mother. And if the mother say thank you, it's a big, big, big deal, Chun. I said, "Okay, thank you."
Again, wonderful dynamics. This was a great conversation, June. Tell me, if people wanted to get in contact with you to hear more of your stories, how can they do that?
Yeah, I think the only, I would say, social network that I use is LinkedIn. I do post blogs pretty often there about my learnings and what I see happening. So I think, Jim, you can drop that in the notes, right? Connect with him on LinkedIn. And you know what? Reach out. I love to have this type of conversation. I always say I reserve my Friday afternoon, especially, to mentor people, to have conversation with people. So, I'm open to having conversations with you all if you find that this is helpful. And I always believe that, together is always better. I always believe in that. And if I can offer any help to anybody, because these projects are very, very, very difficult, especially involves multiple cross-functional teams, right? And now I also work with external companies, and that is doubly hard, right? Because of that. So yeah, reach out that way. Happy to have a conversation.
Well, that's a great invitation to have a conversation with you. I might even take you up on that.
I would love that, Jim.
In the meantime, I want to say thank you for being here. I appreciate your time with us. And that's the end of another episode of Building Legendary Leaders.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me. And thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Building Legendary Leaders podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.